Another very exciting show. We will get started with, I understand that Beto, yes, the Democratic, what is it called? Candidate. There we go. Candidate for governor.
Gubernatorial.
Yes, for governor. And so our intern, Jada, we understand that you attended and give us your thoughts about it.
I was really glad that I went, honestly. I'm not somebody who is deeply invested in politics, to be honest. And it wasn't my first time attending a Beto rally. I believe my first time was the march back in 2018, I believe. And was very, it was very uplifting and empowering to be a part of like the PV community, you know, coming together for the cause of basically our future and making sure that our leadership is, you know, we're in the right hands. So I really felt, you know, comfortable being there listening to him. He had answers to pretty much all the questions that people asked, whether it was about healthcare or K through 12 education, whether it was about helping out rural college towns like PV, you know, what his priorities would be if he was elected. So I really enjoyed going. I'm glad that I went.
That's cool. I'm really excited that you guys are continuing the legacy of being active politically. One thing that has really just kind of plagued my brain lately, more so than probably way more than I was a student. But we got to do better at holding these politicians accountable, and not just, you know, when we ready to get them in the office, but while they're in office. They do good about coming to get our vote, but you know, what are we doing to make sure that they're doing things to make sure that they're still doing what they said they were going to do for us.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I agree. And that was one of the things that he mentioned. He was like, it's very important for us to hold our politicians accountable. And I believe him because I feel like he's a very like hands-on person who likes to be in the mix and really, you know, be face to face and have these conversations with, you know, the people that he represents. So I respect that he likes to build the relationships with, you know, the people that he represents in Texas.
Do you think that these students, so first of all, how many students would you say were there?
I would say at first it started off to maybe like 20, but then when I looked around the room, it was pretty packed. So I would say maybe 100 in that little lounge upstairs. Yeah, it was pretty packed, and there was some people standing outside, and people was coming to take pictures and everything. So I would say it was pretty packed upstairs.
nice.
So you think it resonated well, or he resonated well with the students?
I really do believe he did, honestly.
Was there a Q&A after?
There was a Q&A. Yeah, there were people asked maybe like 5 or 6 questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did he have any specific, did we have any asks that are specific to PV? And if not, did he have any, I guess, specific promises that he made to the PV community?
I remember Exante Wallace. He's also an educator and he's the city commissioner, I believe. And he asked what Beto would do as far as like helping out PV rural towns like PV. And Beto basically responded by saying that he does want to show up and he doesn't want to forget the fact that these areas in Texas are still important. You know, just because we're not urban and we don't necessarily have the resources, we can get those things, and those things are easy to support so that, you know, the rural college towns aren't left out and they aren't left behind.
Yeah. If you look at a lot of the clippings and the after coverage, then congratulations, thank you for the coverage. You know, he's talked a lot about what happened with this last winter storm with ERCOT and how they met. Did he talk on other issues that he would also kind of focus his candidacy and platform on? Because there are a lot of concerns with Governor Abbott. Did he talk about a lot of those concerns with his discussion with the students?
Yeah, he brought up Governor Abbott a few times as far as like the power grid failure back last year. And he brought up marijuana legalization. He brought up reopening clinics and things like in rural communities because there are a lot of clinics closing down and stuff like that. So he basically just wants to bring back everything that a lot of communities lost, and he wants to basically support the smaller communities and not just focus on the big ones.
Okay. Well,
I hope when he gets in office that PV is at the finance, properly funding Prairie View A&M University is at the top of some of his initiatives. That's
Yeah,
what we need to push.
He did mention that he wanted to get someone from Prairie View on the board. I'm not sure what board it was, but he said that someone hasn't been on the board since 1876. So he wants to change
That's what
that.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, he wants to change that. So he was mentioning that he's very loyal to PV in our community. So he wants to definitely get involved.
Yeah, that's what we need.
He's talking about the Board of Regents.
Yeah.
Remember
exactly.
the all public schools in the state of Texas, the Board of Regents are assigned by basically the governor. Now it has to be selected by a area representative that puts it in front of the governor, but the governor actually has to make the final call. So my only thing is, I think we have to be careful when we look at one individual. It has to be a collective and more people in terms of the legislature that supports the triangle framework, the judicial system, the board, and the governor. If we just looking at the governor, one individual, we've seen that at the federal level. One individual can't make it happen if he doesn't have the sort of support of the body in terms of being able to make actions work. So
yeah, I just you're absolutely right. And so for our listeners, if you have not voted, by the time you hear this, it's going to be Tuesday. So if you have not voted, go ahead and turn this podcast off or take it in the car with you and go and vote, because it's we can't just continue showing up every 4 years, right? We have to show up for all elections, local, state, all elections. Okay. And so again, Jada, thank you so much. Glad that you are. I can't say all I was doing when I was in college was voting. I wasn't going to rallies or anything like that. So again, thank you so much. But I do want to move on to.
well,
I want to move on to. We've got some PV history. So this is our last final few days of Black history. And so what we want to do is talk about some PV history. And so many of us have heard of Frederick Douglass, but have we heard of Frederick Douglass Patterson? Okay, do we know the tie-in, with Prairie View and UNCF? Roland.
Yeah, so hey man, with a name like Frederick Douglass, right? You kind of bound for something great.
Right. It ought to be.
You should at least, right? But no, man, Dr. Frederick Douglass Patterson. I mean, this guy has an amazing story from early on. I mean, at the age of 2, he was orphaned. Both of his parents died of tuberculosis. So he was an orphan from the age of 2, going on to become the 3rd president of Tuskegee University. He came out of Prairie View back when it was Prairie View Normal and Industrial College. So that should tell you the decades in which it was when he was there. But yeah, you look at him, 1944, he actually founded the UNCF. As we all know, the UNCF was primarily geared towards helping those private Black colleges get funding. And a very prominent life that he's lived. I mean, the guy's resume is extensive, from being a Presidential Medal of Honor winner. He served on President Truman's Commission of Higher Education. Most notably for Tuskegee, he actually developed their veterinary medicine programs in addition to their engineering and their commercial aviation programs. So getting his PhD out of Cornell, which is synonymous with him being also a good member of Alpha Phi Alpha. So hey, those brothers continue to be onward and upward and doing great things throughout the great states of the United States of America. So kudos to him. We're gonna do a great shout out to Dr. Frederick Douglass Patterson. Prairie View producing productive people.
Definitely.
That was a little more than productive.
Well, yeah, he was very productive.
Is it appropriate time when we say 06 at this point?
It's never an inappropriate time, I don't believe. There's proper protocols, but I think it can be overlooked.
All right. I mean, y'all bullcorn is a 1-9.
Oh, 6.
Y'all still slow with that one. See, y'all can't even get that one right.
It's the latency in the network, man.
That's what it is. That's what we'll blame it on. No, excellent. Very, 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 very good. Very good. So our boy Biden, he is delivering on a campaign promise to nominate the first African-American, or Black, as I like to say, female for the Supreme Court. Now, again, we're talking about Black history, so let's just remember that in the court's 233rd year, this is only the third African-American nomination. Okay, that's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. I don't know how to say it, but congratulations to Kentaji Brown. She has been nominated by Biden, stellar academic credentials. What do you all think? What do you think of the nomination?
I think he did what he needed to do. He did what he should have done. It was Black women, essentially, I feel, that put him in office in the first place. Her credentials are so stellar that the last two judges who were installed into the Supreme Court cannot measure to her resume. And it is going to be interesting to see what foolishness the GOP throws out there in rebuttal to her nomination. It's going to be highly insulting to her, I'm sure, and she's going to have to do her best Kamala facial expression to not verbally or visually cuss them out with her facial expression. So
it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because she was appointed district court judge in 2012 at that level, and President Obama had a hand in it. So with the idea that she would later be a candidate. So you talk about playing chess instead of checkers. How about that for a thought? And she was really challenged on her policies toward Guantanamo Bay and her civil work against criminals. So, and she has a family of criminal history. I don't want to go into it, but I mean, she has uncles that have been sentenced to life for, criminal crimes. So she had, I mean, her career, and not only her career, but her insight into criminal law. No one has that insight. No one has that grasp of, what's really wrong with the criminal system in the US. So I don't know if you can really challenge her. So yeah, she's gonna have that Kamala look, but she's gonna have a couple of other sister looks. If really you're gonna come at me with that.
Yeah, it says a lot too about her, because I believe her career start was as a public defender, and it takes a special person. It takes a special person to be a public defender. And I think it, again, like what you're saying, gives her insight that some of her peers, they just don't have.
And once again, we called it a year ago, and this was what name a game that is more strategic than chess, because that's what they played to move her from one spot to the next spot to now this ultimate spot.
Shout out to Alan Williams for pushing that narrative.
Yep. And to bring it all the way home to PV, we have PV alum running for Harris County judge, Beverly Armstrong, PV class of 1990, running for the 208th Criminal District Court judge seat. PV's own, out of the College of Engineering. Let's get out there and vote. Put some PV ladies in the judge's chair. I think Black women are dominating the judgeships throughout the Houston area.
That'll be a second judge for us, won't it? Got another one of your Delta sisters. That's
Is she a Delta?
No, she's a member of AKA, and she's also a member of Epsilon Gamma Iota.
My founders were AKA, so okay, good for her.
Oh, there you go. I was speaking of Erica though, but okay.
So get out there and vote. We got Black women trying to run everything.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So I'm gonna move on, and this is I don't want to belabor this, but this next part of the locker room talk, I'm gonna call it winning at all cost. And is that where we are going now with the swag? Art Brows.
What about them?
So I'm like Doug. I'm like Doug. I'm just gonna say this. When I think of Grambling football, I can't help but to think of Eddie Robinson and his legacy and the class and the respect of the organization, because it was beyond football for him. So I think just to associate yourself right now with art, to me, it's just not encouraging at all.
So let's give a little background. Hugh Jackson had his offensive coordinator was Ted White. Ted White, before the season started, it has not started, obviously. He left to go to the Houston Texans and took their quarterback coach job. So Hugh Jackson started looking at the landscape. I don't know how he stumbled upon Art Browse, but he has decided to hire Art Browse as the offensive coordinator for Grambling State. This has been in the works for the last few weeks. I assume it just took a little time for the board to approve it. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I would have personally hired a Black coach for that offensive coordinator job. I also look at it as college football is about W's at the end of the day. Art Browse will certainly help bring W's, bring eyes, attention, good or bad, and will help bring recruits, which will bring money to Grambling State University, which they're in desperate need of. So, I'm outside the Grambling house. I'm not going to throw stones. I understand that I wouldn't have done it. I'm open to listening to a debate about it, for or against.
I got one question. I'm gonna throw this at Doc over here for real quick. Are we, like you say, Shanetta, we're going so far to winning at all costs, right? Are we selling out the legacy for the sake of these, incremental, I guess you call them career building steps in all of this, madness that's been going on, especially more specifically within the SWAC, right? We got folks that are sticking around for a couple of years and moving on. What happened to that Eddie Robinson era when people actually were able to reap the benefits of their hard work of building programs, and they were there for 10 years and 15 and 20 years? Is that time just past us now? We're not going to ever see that again?
That's
no
gone.
I can answer that real quickly. No, coaching is cyclical. I won't bore you with the time, but I've seen this going over the last 20 years that I covered FCS. We'll go, and just like any athletic league, we copycat. And so you'll see a couple of programs copycat. It'll run its course. The problem you have with trying to copycat is the fact that somebody at the end of the day is single and still will win, which means everybody else is measured by the fact they'll lose. So it'll churn and go in a different direction at some period of time. Usually things may take 5 years. You're lucky if they go 7 in terms of the term before it starts churning in a different direction. But I would say be careful and really get into it. If you look at it now, at best, you can say maybe 2 schools are going down this track. When you talk about Hugh Jackson and the connection that Joe Clay talked about, it goes back when Hugh Jackson was the coach, at least at a minimum, was the coach of the Cleveland Browns. He actually brought Art Browse in, or hired him at least, as a consultant of offense before it kind of got dragged out. They pushed him back out of that too. And so he's been right on the edge. And so it'll continue to follow, but no, it's not anything that we see again. And when you say Eddie Robinson, I have to say this again, that's another good brother of 06. So it just tells you how deep ingrained we are historically too.
So let's bring it full circle. How does this impact the SWAC, the way that the SWAC is viewed, if at all? Is this just cyclical or singular to Grambling State? Or is this reflects poorly on the SWAC as a whole, which is, I think, a lot of folks' concern?
It really just depends on who you talk to. If you're talking about the hard heads that are deep in the SWAC over a period of time, they'll see it all connected to HBCUs and certainly the SWAC. Those folks on the periphery, if you would, outside of that, no, they will focus not even necessarily on Grambling. Some of the, what I call the national media, I don't like to call them, anything other than that. They really focus on Hugh Jackson, not even Grambling. They talk about Hugh Jackson, and then the fact that he's at a HBCU, he made this move. So you'll see a lot more focus on Hugh Jackson, maybe the athletic director, VP of athletics, and the president to some degree, maybe even the board. But no, not really. It won't get that large in terms of making this indictment on the SWAC or the HBCU.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. What you got, Mike?
No, I was just like, let's rewind. You know, this man was head of a program where there were, what, 50, give or take, rapes under his regime.
In 4 years.
Yep.
Alleged.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
I don't know.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
We ain't got no money on the podcast yet. Don't come out.
I agree with that. I agree. 50 alleged rape incidents, you know, in a certain span of time. You have a man who won't be hired by a number of institutes. What does that say about the due diligence of Grambling State University when any organization hires an individual in a high profile position? There's a due diligence approach. You look at risk management. You look at how is that going to impact the organization financially, from a perception standpoint. And I just have to wonder what kind of thought process, what kind of due diligence. Now, I think they still have to do a vote. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Gabil. They have, and it has to be unanimous. But when you look at the due diligence that he is in the forefront, I wonder about the due diligence of, you know, Grambling State, and what does that say about other schools if he is to be accepted? Because you've heard a lot of folks outspoken about it. Does this set a precedent for, all right, are we willing, and going back to Joe's, are we willing to just accept and bypass normal due diligence? Because if you have a number of schools that won't accept him, why are we having to now bypass the normal due diligence, say, he's just, I don't care how many wins he's get, he's not right for the university, from a perception, from a number of other perspectives. What does that say about Grambling? And then what does it say about other schools in the SWAC who would be even considering following that type of path?
Well,
I don't
remember,
want to belabor the point. I know we got to get to the next segment. I think they did the due diligence. They even floated this out. It got out there, and you can't tell me that this was leaked by somebody that wanted to see. And it was covered by what I call the underground HBCU circuit, or mixtape, if you would, media, in terms of those HBCUs out there. But they didn't get the significant blowback until it, again, hit a national media sector. And that's because it covers so much. I just don't think they thought they were going to get this type of blowback. And that's why you have some questions of whether this is going to get the final approval from the board. But it's no doubt in my mind that they had talked to everybody internally. Even Doug Williams said that he was contacted. He gave the fact that he wasn't on board necessarily with it, and they decided to proceed anyway. So they certainly talked to folks. For whatever reason, they just thought that they would be okay, and they could make the move, that it wasn't going to hit as hard as it did. And now it has, and now they got to kind of deal with that framework and see how they proceed after this.
well, and I know we got to move on, but I think it's really interesting, as you mentioned, the blowback. They didn't perceive the blowback. They didn't get it until after it was announced. I find it interesting that from a Black folk perspective, we are the most forgiving people known in the history of mankind. We forgave Chris Brown for choking Rihanna. We forgave R. Kelly after we saw that video. We know what he did, but we still went out there and supported him. And so we forgave all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I beg, if we take a deeper look, though, if you're not careful, we tend to forgive people. We do not necessarily forgive those associated with our institutions, whether it's the church or HBCUs. There's many cases where that has, but individuals we tend to do, but not institutional.
That's a great point, and that goes back to what Brother Roberts was telling us the other day, that it was not the people that did it. It was not the university that did these things, but it was the people. We forgive the people and not the institutions.
Right. And so don't say another word. We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on.
Great pivot.
This is a touchy subject, and I'm pretty sure we could stay on it all day. However, let's bring this on back.
Did she just put an exclamation point on us? She held her finger up so like
no. Okay. So
no, that's called a flag. You just got a technical. Since we talk about basketball, that's a technical. Go to the free throw line.
So the last thing we're going to do as far as our locker room talk is just to say that March is National I Love My HBCU Month. We are celebrating our beloved Purdue A&M University experience by showing love. 3 ways to do it. Share your PVAMU experience by posting your most memorable moments on social media. Follow PVAMU Social for the daily theme post. Be sure to use hashtag Show Some Love PVAMU. You can also make a gift in support of the annual fund, which is an unrestricted gift that allows the university to provide emergency assistance for current students regardless of their major or classification. Scholarships have restrictions, which is why the annual fund is important. You can also post, I love my HBCU, I donated image from your online gift receipt and tag 10 friends, challenge them to give too. To give, you need to go to giving.pvamu/HBCU2022. Again, I love my HBCU month is in March, and let's make sure that we paint social media purple and gold.